Hey Adam, good to see you, man.
Yeah, you too. It's been a few years since we haven't seen, no?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've loosely crossed paths, a handful of times, but we've never gotten to sit down and actually have a true conversation. So I'm pretty excited about this today.
How have you been?
Pretty good. You know, we're in the middle of COVID-19 and the US is pretty much banished from the rest of the world. So I have been not traveling for the first time in basically the last 20 years of my life, which has been kind of nice in a way, actually. I'm getting to know my home area a little bit, spending a lot of time with my family. It's been really good. How about you?
I've been climbing in my local crag quite a lot as well. And like also training, let's say, in the long term for the Olympics, just taking the advantage that the Olympics were postponed by 1 year. Let's say, make the weak parts at least like the average parts.
Right, the weak parts being speed climbing.
Definitely speed climbing. Let's say I'll be super happy if I won't be last in speed in the Olympics.
That's your goal, to be not last.
Well, I think it can easily happen that you will run up 15-meter speed wall in 7 seconds and still ending up last.
Yeah, that's crazy. Probably both of us, we have this background of, a bit of competition climbing, a lot of sport climbing, trying to just get really physically strong. And honestly, that was like the secret sauce for me getting into adventure climbing. And so in some ways, when you went up on the Dawn Wall, like I was obviously shockingly impressed with how quickly you adapted. But I also kind of wasn't that surprised, because I feel like the base of any kind of climbing really is spending so much time trying to physically and mentally get stronger at the individual moves, and you've done that more than anybody. So kudos, it was so inspiring for me to see that go down. I kind of wish it would have taken you a little bit more time, like maybe another year to pull it off, but it certainly was cool.
No, thank you very much. I think I had the advantage that I always was so interested in so many styles of climbing, and I think what helped me the most is that I'm from Czech Republic, and there is the sandstone climbing, which is also very technical, but also very mental, as there are big runouts. And I think to kind of feel comfortable in the middle of the big wall, standing on a tiny footholds and facing potentially big runouts is what I think mostly the sandstone climbing really helped me to feel right in the middle of the Dawn Wall.
Yeah, you have to be used to that idea of potentially spending a lot of time in midair, taking big falls. which is hard when you're several thousand feet off the ground. Did it feel intimidating to you at all at first?
At first, it felt like the most scary climbing I've ever done before. I did not trust the packers or copperheads at all. Right on pitch 6, I ripped a couple of copperheads in one fall.
It's interesting. I feel like the sort of the European take on the Dawn Wall when I did it was that it was a sport climb. I did an event with Reinhold Messner where he was actually trash talking it pretty hard, because he was like, "You've bolted this magnificent wall," and I don't think many people understood that it's kind of real. The intimidation factor is kind of real, and I didn't really rip many copperheads out when I was climbing, or peckers out, because
I ripped the wires that...
Yeah, you break the wires.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I spent a tremendous amount of time climbing, and then when I would feel myself start to fall, I would kind of grab them and slowly wait on. Did you get to the point where you were just lobbing off and taking hard falls on bad gear, and you were just fine with that?
I took a few falls, especially on the first push, when I had no idea, and I was just shocked how invisible those holds and mostly footholds are.
Yeah, I mean, you're used to climbing on really technical sandstone. How did it feel? Did it feel more technical? Was the footwork even more tricky? I mean, I'm probably just different because the rock's different.
The place where I come from Czech Republic, we have very slippery limestone. Footholds are really, really bad and slippery And yet at the same time, there is no way how you can like campus through those moves. You really have to trust your footwork. And sandstone is like 2 or 3 hours away, and the footholds are more like slopey, and you have to snare, and sometimes the rock is a little bit sandy. And so I think the combination of both helped a lot on the downwall, because it's on the combination of like snaring while like laybacking, and then I would say the rock on the downwall is even more slick than our super polished limestone. I think that was possibly the most shocking thing. Like, I did not imagine the granite on the downwall to be that slick and that slippery. And actually that took me some time to figure out that in most of the cases you just don't snare, but you rely on those tiny, tiny edges. But for that you need to have a proper footwork. That means like you really have to have super tiny climbing shoes and really, really hard ones.
Did you ever feel like you had to actually use your muscles that much? I mean, like I feel like I'm just like not that strong of a climber at all compared to you, but I've spent a lot of, I just have a lot of experience on that specific style of climbing. Were the individual moves hard, or were they just like insecure?
Yeah, they were hard. And the most shocking thing, that like the style that I need to get used to the most, was actually not the laybacking or like finger cracks, but it was like the 2 cracks pitches on the downwall, the traverses, which like looking at it, it looks like a sport climb, like vertical wall, it's all bolted. In those 2 pitches there is like no fear. But I really had to get into completely different mindset. The efficiency was more in the precision rather than speed. So it really took me a lot of days to figure out that like slowing down and being completely relaxed will make me feel those moves like easier. And like it was really hard to convince my mind that this is the way.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like I've never had flow in my climbing in the first place, so it's something I certainly need to learn.
I think you have.
Ooh, yeah, I mean,
for sure, if you are climbing on the video the pitch 15, you look like in an incredible flow. Right.
Yeah, maybe I've found it, but I just never climbed that fast. Like whenever I've come and climbed on the European crags that you're used to, it's funny. One thing I noticed going climbing in Europe is every crag I would go to, usually when I go there, I go for some event tour or something, so I get to go to a crag for like 2 days, and usually I go with somebody that knows the crag quite well, and it's really interesting, the phenomenon where every time somebody gives me a tour of a crag, they're like, oh, this crag was first established by Beat Kammerlander or whoever in 1982, and they give me the history, and then they're like, and then Adam Ondra came, and this is what happened. And it's crazy how every crag in Europe has that same story. It's pretty amazing. And then they watch me climb, and they're like, "Oh no, you need to climb so much faster. Like you need flow." At some point, I want to get a little into understanding like how inexperienced you were on multi-day big wall climbing. Like had you ever climbed, had you ever spent the night on a portaledge before coming to Yosemite?
I spent 1 night on the portaledge before in Madagascar on a route called Tough Enough, where I got to climb with Pietro del Pra. And so this wall was, I think, 400 meters. It was 10 pitches. So we got to spend 1 night there. And I think before going to Yosemite, I did like 4 pitches in my life on trad gear.
Four pitches only on trad gear in your whole life. Wow. That's pretty insane to me, because I mean, so when you were up there and putting in the trad gear, you were really like, you had no idea whether you were placing it correctly, whether it was going to hold.
Not really.
That's awesome.
I mean, I did the nose before, where the gear placement is really easy. The crag splitters, it's like there's nothing to mess up. And at the same time, it was big advantage that in those crags I felt like I wasn't going to fall. And then like the hard bits on the nose are like fixed gear, either bolts or any other fixed gear.
Oh, so that's how, yeah, because you climbed the nose like in a day before you went up the Dawn Wall with your father, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so, yeah, that route has bolts on the hard parts, quite a bit of it, or fixed gear, and then the rest was just so easy that you knew you wouldn't fall.
I wouldn't say like the rest of the climbing is super easy, but I like trusted myself enough that I wasn't going to fall.
Did you have many experiences on either the Dawn Wall or the nose where you fell and a bunch of the gear you placed like came out of the crack?
Yes, I took one fall and I ripped the gear, and it was in Norway, and it was like the first piece, so I landed from like 5 meters straight on my butt. Wasn't very nice.
That was your first time falling on gear. The gear just pulled right out of the crack and you hit the ground.
But it was like the smallest cam, like the 000, so no wonder.
So you climbed the nose with your dad, and wait, I want to hear more about this story, because didn't you top out in a storm and like you guys had to like bivvy on top? You had a pretty full-on experience, didn't you?
Yeah, it was obviously in October, so there was lots of people on the nose, and we picked up the day that the weather forecast said it would be like with the rain approaching like 4 a.m. in the morning. So we started the day before thinking like we would top out at midnight and we would be safe. So we started climbing at 4 or 5 in the morning. By late afternoon, we would get it to the Great Roof. In the meantime, there would be lots of parties just rappelling down because of the approaching storm. Well, on the Great Roof, I didn't succeed to free climb in, so we just kept going. Then I ate it through the hardest bit of changing corners. By midnight, we made it to the top, and it just started raining. I did the last boulder problem like with the first raindrops, and then we were there on the top, not making the descent via east ledges ever before, and it's pretty hard to onside that, especially in the storm. So we were somewhere like where we should have found the fix ropes to abseil. We were also trying to Google, but nothing was, we just couldn't find it. But we found some tree that we could rappel down. And based on one of the topo that I find, it looked like it could have been it. That was like 3 o'clock in the morning, like pissing rain. And my dad just rappelled those 60 meters down and couldn't find any other anchor. It was like long minutes. I had no idea what was going on, and all of a sudden he was back at the tree, just literally just pulling on the rope back on like leaning slab. So there was no other way that we just had to wait until the sunlight. So we just waited 3 hours in some kind of little cave, really cold, without any bivy gear, with one down jacket for 2 that was like completely soaked anyway. So then getting down back to the car like at 10 a.m. I thought like maybe this is like a little bit way too much alpinism for me.
So was that your first open bivvy of your life?
Yeah. Without bivy gear for sure.
Yeah, and this was like your second day in Yosemite, right? Something like that.
Day 3, I would say.
Day 3. Did you do any rock climbing in Yosemite before climbing the nose?
Yeah, I think the very first climb I did in Yosemite was a generator crack.
Generator crack, nice. Okay, so at least you did one very short pitch before going up and climbing the nose.
And then we went to the Cookie Cliffs.
Yeah, the Cookie Cliffs.
We did some climbs there.
Nice. And then after that experience, did you contemplate just like going home? Or you're like, now we've done the easiest route on El Cap, we're just gonna go straight
I think that was it with the adventure, and I thought Dawn Wall, yeah, I'll figure it out and it will feel more like sport climbing.
Yeah.
That at least we will have a bivy gear for a bivy.
Did you have any problems with your skin? Like, I feel like for so many of the years that I worked on the climb, like the skin was my limiting factor. Did you experience that at all?
Yeah, like I think I was quite tactical about my skin. So when I was working out the route, I always stopped before I felt like there was a danger of splitting.
Right, interesting.
But I was super lucky that during the push, I only made a split while sending the pitch 15. Both you and Kevin did the pitch 15 with the tape on, right?
Yeah.
Which, when I was trying it with the tape, it felt really, really hard. One more funny thing, that I was climbing with Pavel, who is my manager now, and he was a total big wall beginner as well.
Oh, he was?
He's never been on a big wall. At the same time, he's like really good in those things and like understanding how to set up the portaledge. He's like very, let's say, talented for any kind of technical knowledge. So he figured it out everything like really fast. So I was very lucky to have Pavel along.
Yeah, because Pavel's like done Arctic expeditions, and he's just like a real deal adventurer, right?
Yeah. And at the same time, he took the preparation like really seriously. So in order to be fast in jogging, he would go to his home crag and like practice jogging, being as fast as possible. He practiced setting up the portaledge on the meadow, and then he set it up in like 5 minutes, like for the first time. And he did it for the first time in his life on the wall. Super impressive.
That's nice. Yeah, I think it would be kind of fun to contrast our experiences a little bit early on. So, I was with Kevin, who was kind of a beginner, but I was experienced at setting up portaledges and kind of knowing how to move around on the wall. When I first tried the Dawn wall, I went and I climbed up like the first 10 pitches of a few different routes and tried to like start to piece it together. And then I spent like honestly like a year, more than a year, just trying to piece together where the line actually went, and like found the traverse, but looked at it for like weeks and tried the moves before we could even really decide whether that was the actual route, because it's this giant maze, right? Like we would like spend 3 days trying to like venture up or rappel down from above and try and find other ways to go, and it just didn't really like it. In the end, we're like, oh man, that traverse is like really the only way to get across this blank section of rock.
But even back then, you just didn't know whether the traverse was possible, no?
Yeah, it was funny because I was looking at it being like, I think this works, I think this is the way. And Kevin would be like, you're totally insane. There's no way that's gonna work. And then we would spend 3 days going somewhere else and trying to find a new way. And so eventually we got to the point where like, this is the only way that it could potentially work.
And let me ask, so how many years or how many days on the wall you spent before you actually thought like, this route is possible? Maybe not for me, but somebody can climb that. I found all the missing pieces for the whole climb.
So I went up there maybe four or five trips, kind of like just exploratory, wondering if it was possible, and kind of like thinking maybe it was possible. And then I spent like a whole nother season going up and like being like, is this a thing? And actually trying all the individual moves, and that the dyno on pitch 16 was kind of the one last remaining piece that we couldn't put together. And so I didn't think I would be able to do it. And then all the rest of the climbing was so hard that I actually gave up on the project altogether. And then Josh Lowell from Big Up Productions, now from Sender Films, he actually was the one that came back to me, and he was like, we should make a film about this to put it out there for future generations. And on that trip to make that film, which I never thought I would succeed, I actually managed to almost do the dyno. And so that was like the last one remaining piece. And then that was the point where I was like, I think this is a climb. I think there's a good chance that somebody will do this someday. So it was really 2 years essentially of exploratory climbing before I got to the point where I was like, this is a mission.
And that was the filming for Progression with Josh.
Yeah, this is a mission that somebody should do. And then I started to wonder if I should be that person again when Kevin joined the project.
Nice. And how was the story with the dyno then? When did you actually find out that there is a way to move from that point to another and not using the dyno but making this huge detour?
Right, that was 1 week before we went for the for our successful push. That dyno, like literally thousands of times. I'd measured it out and rebuilt it at home and tried it there thousands of times. I could never do it, and it was like very stressful to me because I was like, I've got all the rest of the route. I know I can do it, but there's this one move I just can't do. And so just out of desperation, about one week before we went for a final attempt, I was like, I came up with the idea of climb, because originally I'd sort of looked at it before, but my idea was to climb pitch 15 and then just continue around on that pitch. And I didn't think of that idea of actually finishing the pitch and then back climbing and going around. And so that was the sort of the last piece that I needed, is to like back climb part of pitch 15 and then climb all the way up and around to do the dyno instead.
That dyno, it felt hard to me. I mean, I tried it like 5 times, and there is this problem that you really have to first jump upwards and like then ledge the crimp while kind of like falling down, because otherwise you just smash yourself against the sidewall. And I really had the image of Kevin hurting his ankle 1 season before you did it, guys. So that's why it just felt logical and almost nicer to make the big loop. But because I also considered like your line that you took is like the weakest point of the whole part of the wall. So if there is an easier way to do the loop, then why do I have to do the dyno?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that you went that way, because I figured for sure you'd be able to do the dyno. Although we took Chris Sharma up there too at one point, and he tried the dyno a few times and I think he was just a little too intimidated, because you're not only hucking an 8-foot dyno or 2.5 meter dyno, but you're also 1,500 feet off the ground, and it's usually kind of windy, and it feels so intimidating to just like.
For sure, it would feel easier if it's on the ground. Like, it's the same thing as like walking on a slack line is so much easier than walking on a high line.
Oh yeah, that's a good analogy. But watching Kevin do it was kind of amazing. Like, Kevin got to the point where he could do it pretty consistently. It's pretty cool. So you had Pavel and you had Heinz, who knew a little bit. We did like one Skype call, I think, when you were in Norway, and I gave you a little bit of information. And then when you showed up, did Kevin teach you how to jumar? Is that right? Did he like show up with jumars and kind of show you how he jumars?
Like, let's say, like teaching me how to jumar efficiently. In my experience, all I was doing in my life for like jumaring when I was bolting in the cave of Norway, for example, just using one jumar and grigri. And that's obviously not a technique you want to use when you want to jug up 400 meters before trying the pitch 14 or 15. So Kevin really gave me a good lesson how to work with 2 jumars at the same time, because I was always struggling like having the sling either too long or too short, and it never really felt right. So we got it dialed together. It helped me a lot.
So we did one Skype call, and then you came and you climbed your first time on the Dawn Wall. You just climbed it from bottom to top over a certain, like, how many days?
I think it took us 4 days, but we were fixing the ropes in the meantime, so it wasn't like one 4-day push.
Oh, so you like went from the ground up one day, you fixed up the first, handful of pitches, then you go to the ground.
Took a rest day, jugged up again to the point where we stopped and continued, and just kept on going like that.
And did you leave your portaledges and stuff on the route?
After the day 2, we left our portaledges, yeah.
And then you climbed to the top, and did you bivvy without your portaledges up high somehow?
So I think first day I climbed like first 6 pitches. The second day, I think I made it to the top of pitch 15. Then we fixed the lines, fixed the portaledges, went down, and then it was 2-day push to go to the top.
Oh, so you went back up to your portaledges, you climbed a bunch, maybe you came back down, slept on your portaledges, and then the last day like ascended the fixed lines and into the top?
Exactly. The biggest obstacle was pitch 17. Like this 14A, the layback, just to like kind of somehow 8 climb it or somehow get to the top. Yeah. Because the last crux is like, is hard crux, and there was no fixed gear, and pretty much 5-6 meter run out from the last pecker.
Right. So that was hard to overcome.
That was probably
section.
the most precarious climbing that I did on the down wall during that push.
Did you have a hammer or any aid
so
gear?
so I did the first 2 moves, but then I thought like I could not continue as I had no idea, and there is like one bad pecker placement. So I was like trying to crimp as hell these bad holes, putting the pecker inside, putting the hammer, then hang in, felt like, oh, this is shit, more hammering, 30 seconds just to like, oh, I'm not falling, then somehow pulling up and reaching as high as I could into some slot, and then finishing the pitch.
Yeah, like 514 aid climbing. After that first big time, like that 4-day push to the top, you had ropes fixed from the ground all the way up to...
All the way to the top, because of the camera crew, because of Heinz. So we just fixed the whole climb.
The whole climb?
To the
wow.
top.
So you carried enough rope up there that you were hauling a lot of rope.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your first time up there, you climbed from Wino to the top in a day, without being attached to the fixed line. So that's some of the most, I would say, traditionally adventurous, trad climbing. There's like wide cracks. It's dirty in places. Did that all feel quite easy for you?
The upper bit of the down wall felt okay. After the experience on the nose, I felt much more confident with the gear and with the crack climbing, and I really, really enjoyed this weird pitch, like going out to the right, this kind of like weird layback off with.
Yeah,
that was so
the
good.
one before the ship's bow at the top. It's like you really got a chicken wing and like hand jam way back in the crack.
That was amazing.
So did you find that hard, or was it you just like figured out how to do it pretty quickly?
I did it on site, but it was pretty epic fight for sure. But it's hard to say whether you can do that pitch easy.
So Kevin spent 6 years working on the Dawn Wall, and he never managed to do that pitch until we actually did it in the end. And even after he had gone through the dyno and everything, we got up our last day on the route. I led the pitch, and then he went to top rope it, and he couldn't do it. Like he fell, he lowered down, he tried it again. He couldn't get the jamming down. I thought he was gonna have a mental breakdown at one point, because he just like, it was like this one pitch at the top that's not even that hard is gonna be the
How
end
did
of
you
it.
feel at that point? Like, ooh, maybe we will have to spend here another week or something. You trusted him.
I was worried that he was just gonna like give up and go to the top after all that.
No way.
But what he ended up doing is like not jamming. Actually, he just crimped on on the breakable little holds, and then each time he would like let go of a hold, it would just fall off the wall and under the ground. That's how he ended up climbing it. I think that's pretty amazing that you adjusted to that adventurous, like traditional, because that part of the climb you have to trust the cams. There's not very much fixed gear. There's some like route finding difficulties. But
it was like easy enough to feel comfortable for me. And on the other side, I haven't done much trad before my Yosemite trip. On the other side, I did quite a bit of routes that were relatively scary, at least like on the sandstone in Czech Republic, some routes in the Alps, which were bolted, but they were runouts. And in some of these cases, these routes are way scarier than most of the climbing on the El Cap. Because like on the nose, if you are scared, you just place more gear. unchecked sandstone in some of the routes, there's just no gear that you can place, and you just have to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, I always, some of the more engaging, scary climbing I've done is actually in the Wendenstock. Because like you said on El Cap, most of the time, if you get scared, you can find places to put gear. But in the Wendenstock, I remember, have you climbed there in Switzerland in the Wendenstock?
No.
There was so much of the time where I would clip a bolt and I would just look up at this sea of limestone and there's no chance to see the next bolt. And it's steep and it's all hard and you just have to start going up and like praying to God that you will find a bolt up there somewhere. And
but at the same time, you get to a situation, as long as it's steep, deep inside that, well, if I fall off, it's gonna be a huge fall, but it's most probably it's gonna be safe. Yet still, the idea of facing 20-meter fall is not so nice.
Yeah, I think probably one of the huge advantages for you though is that you were able to like accept that possibility and do it anyways. Whereas I think most people would not even accept that possibility. They'd be like, if I'm going to take a 20-meter fall, there's no chance I'm going to even climb up the wall in the first place.
Well, I think for me it helped a lot that I'm also used to like skipping the bolts in sport climbing in order to save some energy. For example, have you done it when you were like smaller kid and you were doing your sport climbing project?
Oh yeah, I used to skip bolts a lot. I think that actually really helped.
So you are totally fine with that, and that might have helped you in this transition for the tread climbing or El Cap climbing, no?
Yeah, that's interesting because I spent a lot of time climbing in Rifle in Colorado. It's like a pretty famous sport climbing area here. And yeah, so I wouldn't get pumped. I would clip bolts and I got pretty used to taking, 10, 15 meter falls. And so I remember I took that mentality to Indian Creek, like our best crack climbing area. And I started getting pumped on routes and I was like, I'm just going to place a couple of cams and run it out. And people hadn't really done that before. They're like, that's insane. That's so crazy that you would do that. So that's for all you aspiring trad climbers out there, you just need to skip bolts on sport routes first. And that's going to help you, I think.
Yeah, I think in general, it's good to start with sport climbing for any kind of climbing you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's proven. I mean, you are such an example of that. Like, when I first went to Yosemite, trad climbers and sport climbers were like two different breeds, right? Like the trad climbers would look at the sport climbers and be like, oh, you guys all wear spandex and you're too skinny, the wall is just going to kill you. There's no way that you're actually going to be able to survive up there. And then the sport climbers just wouldn't even go up there in the first place. They would just, work on pulling on small holds. And I think it was Lynn Hill was the first one who had that competition and the sport climbing background, but like also previous to that had the background of climbing in Yosemite and in Joshua Tree. And she was, I think in my mind, she was the first one that like merged those two and excelled in this really incredible way that I think was way ahead of her time. And so she did that. And then Todd Skinner and Paul Piana kind of had that. And then the Hubers were really they came around at a time when I was old enough that I was really into sport climbing. And I had a history like Lynn where I'd done climbing in the past. But when they came to El Cap and then in a couple months managed to free climb it, I was like, that's the way. You have to have this sport climbing, bouldering, physical background to excel on big walls. And now I think everybody thinks that.
Yeah, and you just push it to even higher level.
Yeah, very slowly and incrementally, whereas you did it all at once.
And then you started just free climbing almost all the 8 lines that were there up for grabs. Yeah. And you finished with the dawn wall.
Yeah, I've spent far too much. Hopefully I'm not finished. Maybe I am finished.
Actually, last year or 2 years ago, you free climbed with Alex a new route on the dawn wall section of the El Cap.
Yeah, so
right?
Yeah, so when Kevin and I were up there all those years, we were kind of, we'd spend so much time just hanging out in portaledges that we were able to look at the wall quite a bit. And I had this theory that there was maybe another route to the left. And we went to do it. And it was kind of amazing because it's just as proud of a line. Like, it's actually even more proud in some ways. It follows this big, steep section of the wall, but it just turns out to be way easier. And kind of way better.
Isn't it a little bit disappointing that now you free climb a line which is so much easier than the actual free dawn wall, that the free dawn wall is not the easiest way how to get through the dawn wall section of El Cap.
That's a little bit disappointing, but there is for all you people out there, there is the dawn wall, like the King Line dawn wall, where you climb the dawn wall to Wino Towers, and then you go left and you finish on this new route, and that would be like the ultimate dawn wall, the ultimate dawn wall, because it's got these pitches up top that are. There's got a pitch that's 70 meters long. It's super pumpy. It's like one of the, probably arguably the best pitch on El Cap. And it would just be a way prouder way to finish the dawn wall. So that's what somebody's got to do.
You're not going for that?
Probably not. No. Wait, are you? Yeah. Speaking of that, do you have any? Like, did Yosemite make you aspire to climb more in that style, or you're just like, tick, done, I got that off the list, now I'm going to go back to sport climbing and World Cups? Do you think you'll ever go back to more traditional styles of climbing, or are you just so fascinated with the flow and the gymnastic style that's where you're going to focus?
No, I just love it all. I know I will never stop sport climbing. That will always be like the thing that I'll do, let's say, the most. But then spicing it up with a little bit of trad and maybe even going more into the higher altitude is something that I would really, really love to do one day. But for that, I need to gain more experience. Like going to the places like Patagonia with zero experience is maybe not the best idea. Well, maybe it's not the best idea to do it even in Yosemite, but you're facing less risk.
I think the key is you got to go with somebody that has some experience. My first trip to Patagonia, I went with my friend Topher Donahue, who was hugely experienced, and I had no experience. And then when I went with Alex to Patagonia, he didn't have any experience in Patagonia, but he didn't have that much experience. But then I was a little bit more experienced, so I think.
Did you feel like experienced enough at that point already in that kind of terrain?
Oh, probably not, because I had done a couple trips there, but I didn't feel like I was hugely experienced. But I think experience is a little bit of like knowing how to survive in that environment, but it's also knowing that that even when things feel uncomfortable, it's okay to keep going. And Alex just has that mentality all the time anyways. Like his risk threshold is obviously like off the charts, as is yours in a lot of ways. And so I think like the key to that big mountain climbing is to know that difference between what's actually going to kill you and what just feels uncomfortable and scary. And it's similar on a route like the Dawn Wall, because theoretically you could fall 60 meters on the Dawn Wall and it would be totally fine because the anchors are bolted. There's not any ledges to hit. Like it should turn out okay. It's just hard to convince yourself of that. And taking that mentality and taking it into places like Patagonia is pretty similar, really.
Are any plans to return there?
I'm not gonna say no. I think the big mountain climbing is the most emotionally appealing type of climbing to me. Like going into that big mountain environment, especially as I get a little older and I just like can't pull as hard. Like I know that I'm, I know if I go and try and climb something that's harder than the Dawn Wall, there's going to be so much failure involved that in some ways that's like hard to stomach. Like I don't know if I want that experience. Whereas I know I can go to a place like Patagonia where the climbing is much easier, but the whole environment is more intense, and I know I will more likely find success, and I will learn a lot more just because there's so much more. So I love that part of it. But I have noticed that every year that I go to Patagonia, like somebody I know dies, or somebody dies in those mountains. Like there's a lot of uncontrollable risk down there. And I think especially since the mountains are thawing, like we're having these really big, long, warm weather windows, and the mountains are thawing out more, and there's more rock fall than there used to be, I believe. And so as a father these days, I question whether I should go. Yeah. But I'm sure all those risks they're manageable. There's ways to get around them.
My question is, what helped you in all those trips or years on the dawn wall where you doubted yourself whether you could ever do it, to believe that it was possible? It was more that you just didn't care in so many moments. You just...
Yeah, I think I vacillated back and forth between just being excited by the process and then sometimes being really downtrodden because I thought I had put so much work into something that was never going to happen. Like I went through quite an emotional roller coaster, but I think what really kept me at it is that I loved being up there. I loved the discovery, and there was so much to discover. Like we always felt like we were making forward progress, and as long as that was the case, I was going to stick at it as long as I could. And like sometimes I would end the season feeling pretty defeated, but then I'd be home in the off season thinking about the experience and the beauty and the possibility, and that would bring me back every year. I actually told my wife and my friends that I'd given up on it several times, and then that would kind of ruminate in my head for a little bit, and then I would come back and be like, oh no, I can't give up. I really want to do this. Yeah, I think a lot of people are like, it's so crazy that you had this goal and you were so laser focused on it. And I'm like, it wasn't really that way. Like I would try really hard, but then I would doubt, a lot, and then I would come back to it. It's just allowed.
Yeah, I think it's also very difficult for the people to kind of understand that there's a lot of, let's say, process enjoyment, because for sure it's nice to be in the middle of the El Cap, but in the end, if you really love climbing, you don't get to climb that much on the dawn wall because you're just always looking at your fingertips, whether you're going to split or not, and like being really careful. You just don't get to climb a lot, right? During all those days when you were like working those individual pitches.
Yeah, you don't get to climb a lot, but you do get to, jumar around and discover, and there's a lot of just like other labor involved with it, and I just loved that experience, I think. Yeah.
Right. How did it feel different to you compared to like the years when you were like focused on the sport climbing and you were like working on a project like Flex Luther, which is your hardest sport climb and it's still not repeated, compared to like multi-year project, and like also the pressure that you felt before like giving a crux pitch a try on the push?
Yeah. So one thing I had to learn to do was let go of my physical climbing ability a little bit, because climbing on that style doesn't make you strong, really. It actually kind of makes you weak. And so, for instance, I went up there one year with Jonathan Segrist, and we spent a month, and he climbed great. We had an amazing time, but he kind of couldn't like stomach the fact that he was becoming a worse climber at sport climbing and bouldering because of the dawn wall. And so he would get like mentally, it was like too much for him. Like we would get off the wall and he would go straight to the climbing gym and start training. In some ways I almost had to be like too old to be a good sport climber anymore to allow myself the freedom to become a physically worse climber and just focus on the dawn wall. Now you were a little different because you were able to come and do it so quickly that it didn't probably make you that much weaker.
Yeah, but did it help for you to feel like stronger sport climbing and then go on a dawn wall? Or it was more about really being accustomed to this special style and actually being weaker?
It did help, and I realized pretty early on that in the off season, when I wasn't actually in Yosemite working on the dawn wall, I experimented with my training a lot. I actually probably trained harder for sport climbing than I ever had before, because I knew that being able to climb those moves, like really hard moves, was kind of key. So weirdly, I had to let go of my physical strength when I was climbing on the dawn wall, but overall it helped my climbing because it made me think so much more deeply about all the elements of things that make you strong, like how you train and what you eat, and all that. I mean, actually, one of the key things that worked the last season is I did a trip where I hung out with Alex Megos, and I learned a lot about the science of training from him, and I implemented some of that stuff and saw his kind of mentality, the fire that he had, even when he was just training. That's something I took from you, I took from Alex, is like when you guys are just like hanging on the hangboard or campusing or whatever, you guys are like going to the death. You're trying so hard. And so I think that inspired me to up my game in my training, and that helped. Like the last season going to the Dawn Wall, the one that we ended up succeeding in, I had been training so hard and I had all this fire. Kevin hadn't really. And so when we showed up that season, I was just like crushing all the pitches, and he was like, wow, you're really strong. And so that's one of the reasons that he struggled so much on that final attempt.
And what do you think is the future for El Cap? Do you think there's much more?
I think there is more. Yeah, I think there's quite a bit more. I mean, I think it's going to get more popular, probably. Like all of I've seen this evolution. When I first started climbing on El Cap, it was like the Huber brothers coming every season. And then after a few years, I started coming every season. And we were like the only people free climbing on the wall for the most part. There wasn't that many. Nowadays, every season, there's maybe 20 or 30 different teams of people that travel from all over the world and try and free climb El Cap. So it's become more popular in that way, but there's still I would say out of those 20 to 30 teams, like 18 of them are either on the freerider, actually just the freerider, like 18 of them are on the freerider, and not that many people, maybe 1 or 2 parties a season venture outside of that. So I imagine that bubble's just gonna continue to grow. Like people will come back, they'll climb the freerider, then they'll work to harder ones. And then now already we're seeing people do a few hard routes and then come back and get up to the Dawn Wall. So like Nolly Hochtivel, he tried the Dawn Wall last season, and I think he did pretty well. He spent like a whole season and didn't quite pull it off in the end. But I'm sure that there's going to be somebody that will do the Dawn Wall and they'll be like, okay, what's a little bit harder? What's the next step? And that'll happen. People will find that for sure.
But do you think it will be like, is there the next logical line which would like stand out as much as the Dawn Wall stands out? Because I think the beauty of the free Dawn Wall is that it looked like the only possible way in that portion of the wall.
Yeah, I think it'll be a slow evolution, rather than like a big revolutionary thing. Like it's not going to be so obviously different in the future. Like somebody will climb the King line, like the Dawn Wall with the end of New Dawn, and that'll be like a next step. And then they'll figure out that if you go a little bit farther, there's maybe some route that you can start that's harder at the bottom and then links in. It's going to be just like incrementally harder.
Hard to say whether it actually makes sense on the big wall like El Cap to actually like turn it more into a sport climbing game with all the link ups and like routes crossing over and stuff. How do you feel about that as like you are the Yosemite local?
Yeah, I mean, one of the cool things about El Cap is it's really lovely to hang out in the meadow and just look up at the wall. And so people do that enough and they start to figure out ways to link together sections. And then you can bring in technology. Like now there's like photographs of El Cap that are insanely high resolution, and you can go on your computer and start zooming around and actually look at the individual cracks and holds on your computer, and that will help people discover new lines, I think.
What is the future for you? How do you see yourself climbing in the next years?
I don't know. I'm experimenting with different things. I mean, I don't think I'm gonna climb something for me that's harder than the Dawn Wall. I'm not gonna become a better sport climber than I have in the past. Yeah, people in the past have asked me, they're like, "Are you gonna go try silence or something?" And I'm like, dude, there's no way I could ever climb something like that. So I'm not gonna go there. So I don't know. I think I've been getting into like more combining like more traditionally endurance things like running or biking with climbing, and so I think there might be ways to go there.
There was a project that you did together with Alex in Rocky Mountains National Park, some like multiple peak day or?
Yeah, we did a big link up of like 14 different, relatively long routes. It took us 36 hours of, continuously climbing. And so that sort of mega endurance-y stuff is pretty interesting to me. Like one reason that the Dawn Wall always captured my imagination is because I have this curiosity about like the actual limits. Like we have these perceived ideas of what we're capable of, and there's been times in my life where those have been blown out of the water, and I was hoping the Dawn Wall would do that. And I'd had a few experiences in the mountains where I actually it was like it happened all at once. Like you feel like your limit is here, and then physically you have to overcome that. The dawn wall, it didn't happen all at once. It was just like incrementally. But I think in super like ultra endurance type sports, that does happen. Like you hit these walls sometimes, and then like the survival instinct comes in, and and then all of a sudden you can go like twice as far as you thought you could. And I find that world fascinating.
Nice. Do you also like it because you like to climb a lot, and during those huge link ups you just get to climb almost too much?
Yeah, I mean, it's not almost too much because, like, imagine if you were climbing silence. Imagine your process of working on silence, and all of a sudden you realized one day that you could climb silence and then climb silence again, just like double it right in a row. Like that happens in ultra endurance sports, but I don't think that happens so much in more powerful type climbing.
Yeah.
And so
totally get it.
I imagine my curiosity will go there in the future a little bit more. Who knows? I mean, climbing's always going to be kind of my food, but also I as you get older, you start to think about like your effect on the world a little bit more. And so I've been getting more into like environmental work and trying to think of things that where I can actually make a difference that will like better the lives of other people, rather than just focusing on like my own questions around my own physical limits. Yeah. And I think having kids does that too. You know, you want to create a world for them that's going to be hopefully, at least not too much worse than what you've had.
So what are you precisely doing about ecology? How are you trying to make the world better?
Yeah, so I've gotten into. I mean, I really started to read a lot of books about like climate change and kind of where the world is heading. And I realized at some point, although I didn't want to find this out, but the only real way to like solve our problems is through policy making. And so I've gotten into like very begrudgingly into political advocacy. And so like right at this moment, right before the next election, like it's trying to get as many people to vote as possible, to get people to vote for, climate friendly things, for social justice, for, environmental issues, try and elevate those to the most important issues, or do what I can to do that.
I think people that are climbing on the big walls, relying much more on their partners, are maybe more likely to do so, something.
Yeah, I mean, climbing really, most climbing that I've found the most fulfilling, it's a teamwork between two people. That's why the whole experience with Kevin on the dawn wall ended up being such an impactful one for me, because it felt so much better to do something together as a team than it would have been if I was the only one to accomplish it. And so I think it took me a long time to get to that place though. Like I did tons of climbing where it was really about me, and then I had my team of people or my partner that supported me. But when that team becomes like, when you guys finish together, that's like so incredible.
Totally get it.
Yeah. So what does that do to you psychologically? Are you like, oh man, I better like get better, or are you like
it's
ready to pass the baton?
It's motivating for sure. I think because when I was like 9 years old, there was Martin Strajnik who moved to my hometown. He was 12 at that time, and he was always a little bit stronger, at least like in like physical bouldering. And it's always been like so motivating to, I mean, we weren't rivals, but I always like wanted to climb the same boulder that he was able to campus through. And I think for like the progression of climbing, it's pretty important to always have somebody that you can train with and keep pushing yourself. I'm really lucky that I'm training with Richard Haibulin. He is from Kazakhstan, and he's also qualified for the Olympics. But he lives in Brno now, in my hometown, and we train together, and he's really good speed climber. So he's better in speed climbing, but he's so much better in speed climbing that I actually can't almost learn anything from him because he's just like way too good. You know, it's like teaching how to knee bar a climber that climbs 5'7".
Nice. So that's an interesting takeaway. Like, you would spend a lot of time searching for those partners that are going to help you both become better.
In terms of like technique, climbing technique, you will learn so much more if you climb with someone else. And technique is so much involved in, let's say, the modern bouldering for the competitions. Just training by yourself, you will never ever learn the same thing as like the Japanese guys that are all the time training together. All these crazy coordination dynos. Like, if you try it yourself, you might give it 10, 15 tries and it just doesn't work and you say like, this is impossible. But if there are like 10 guys and they all give 10 tries, maybe one guy will do it. And the fact that you see, wow, this is possible, maybe you will end up doing it as well. And the more of these crazy coordination dynos you will do, the more you have it in your muscle memory and the more likely you will end up doing it on the competition as well. Yeah. And I think the technique, it can even go into sport climbing if you are really open to watching the others and trying to learn every time you climb. Also based on how you climb, retrospectively, like trying to think about your climbing, where I made mistakes and stuff. Not only going like, wow, now I'm training and all I have to do is like try to climb as hard as I can. But on the top of that, always use every climbing session as a lesson. And I think that's the future for like the small kids, that they will end up climbing so much harder routes that they will be obviously super strong, but maybe not stronger than Alex Megos at the moment. But on the top of that, their technique will be absolutely impeccable.
Right. So you think the greatest strides in terms of climbing ability will come from better technique in the future?
I think it's harder to be much stronger than Alex Megos at the moment for like human being.
Yeah.
But like to have it all the factors together can create like superhuman that can climb 10B or 17A.
Wow. Crazy. Do you think that all of your training for the Olympics has so you trained for the Olympics and then the Olympics didn't happen. Do you feel like that's going to transition to you being a way better outdoor climber?
For like hard sport climbing, which is like more traditional, you know, there are some holds and you have to have the power and move well in between the holds. Maybe not necessarily, but for certain kinds of climbing, for sure. Let's say speed climbing doesn't really help me that much, but speed climbing will help me a lot in some of the coordination style boulders. Yeah. But at the same time, for me, you know, I'm in a situation for the Olympics as even though it's a combination of all three disciplines, based on the multiplication of the results of the rankings, it really does depend on like at least winning one discipline. And my favorite discipline is lead, so I really have to focus on, let's say, winning the lead. So before I go to Tokyo, I really want to make sure that I'm in the best possible shape for lead climbing. And the best possible shape for lead climbing on the competitions transfers so easily for the outdoor climbing, at least in sport climbing. Or give me a few weeks and I will transition it even for like Yosemite climbing.
Have you struggled with motivation ever in your life?
No. Climbing is the most fun thing ever.
Nice. That's kind of what I expected. So,
nah.
That's awesome.
I mean, for sure there are days where I'm maybe less motivated, but like in general, I never really doubted that the climbing wouldn't be the thing that I like the most.
Yeah. Have you found that the Olympics has I mean, maybe you're just like like on a scale of 1 to 100, you're like always at like 99 or 100 in terms of motivation, it seems like. But have you noticed that having the Olympics as this goal, has that made you closer to that 100 mark, like more of the time than you have been in the past?
I would say it remains kind of the same. Actually, like 2 years ago, when I was like sure I would eventually start training for the Olympics, I was worried that I wouldn't be maybe that motivated to like really give it everything I had for the Olympics. But somehow I just really enjoy training. And I at least try to pretend that even speed climbing is fun. So, so far it's been surprising to me that my level of motivation have remained like really, really high. Like the same high as I've been when I was training for Silence or when I was climbing on El Cap. For sure, if I had to train 5 more years for the combined style with speed climbing, I wouldn't be psyched. But the beauty for me of climbing is that there are so many different disciplines. Well, you can climb 2-meter boulder problem, you can climb 1,000-meter wall like El Cap, and it's still called climbing, even though it looks so radically different. Is beautiful, and I love it all. And the most motivated I remain if I just keep switching the styles.
Yeah, I'm similar in that way. I mean, looking from an outside perspective, like if I look at all of the kind of the natural skill that you have, I feel like maybe that's the top of the list for you. Like you're like like the gift that you have naturally is like your level of motivation. You're so psyched to climb that it just inevitably like pushes you a really long ways.
For me, the training is not sacrifice. I train because that means mostly climbing, or training means also doing some other exercises, but ultimately it's in order to enjoy climbing even more. For me, it's not so much fun to feel like that I'm struggling. For me, the most fun that I have while I'm climbing is when I feel I'm climbing perfect. And once I know how it feels to climb a certain grade or certain route with an exposure and making it feel like easy, and making feel like this is fun, you don't want to go back. So, and somehow like the harder routes you're doing, the more interesting they're also becoming. I mean, you can say that like 5-10 perfect hand crack is so much fun, but if you do 20 of them, it stops being fun. But like proper super hard climb is never the same. And that's kind of motivates me to like keep pushing myself, because the harder I climb, the more fun I end up having.
That's pretty cool. Do you have any do you have trouble ever carving out? I mean, I feel like you have a lot of professional obligations these days. You have different sponsors, you're having conversations with me, like there's so many things threatening to sort of pull you away from what you really want to be doing, which seemingly is just like trying to become a better climber all the time. How do you manage that?
It's hard to handle. And the hardest part is just to organize myself, that I do the volume of obligations that I want, that I enjoy, but for the rest of the time, I can do what I really, really love. And maybe like some years ago, I was struggling with that, maybe saying yes to too many obligations. But I think in the last 2 years, we really managed to do it with my team in a way that I have a lot of climbing. I have a lot of time for climbing still. And like all the obligation doesn't take too much time and energy out of me. Even though, yes, at the same time, we know the times are changing. Let's say 10 years ago, nobody would really recognize me in my hometown. And now I'm more like a star. And it's not the most amazing feeling if you're walking down the street and during like 10 minutes, 4 people want to have a signature or a selfie. But let's say it's a small price to pay. Not everybody can say that he's so lucky to like live the dream and do exactly what I was dreaming about when I was like 7 years old. How do you feel? Like, are you living exactly like how you were dreaming about when you were like 10?
I would say that I feel incredibly lucky. I feel absolutely blessed. I've never been comfortable being a public figure, though. That's something that sits very, very awkwardly in my life, and so I have to figure that part out. And it's sort of like I'm constantly learning. But just like you, I feel like it's a small price to pay.
Just my personal curiosity, Flex Luther. Do you think something broke? Or it's obviously is hard, but how much do you think the route is different compared to when you did it? You don't know.
It's definitely possible that things broke, but I kind of doubt it. I mean, it's a wall with a lot of holds. I feel like if holds broke, there'd be other ways to climb it. Yeah, no, I've been curious about that route and what it's going to look. I think there's some people that are kind of close to climbing it. So I mean, most people don't know the context of that, but that was a route that I did when I was like 21 years old or something.
And just after cutting your finger?
Yeah,
or like
I chopped off my finger. And then I wanted to kind of prove to myself that I could still be a good climber. So I picked a route that I had tried a lot, and I made it my mission, and I managed to do it. And it's probably been, certainly my hardest sport climb, but pretty quickly after that, I sort of transitioned to El Cap climbing and big wall climbing. So I haven't really pursued sport climbing, and nobody's repeated it ever since. It's partially because it's like an hour walk and it's directly south facing, and so the best way to do it's like it's kind of like the adventure sport climb. You have to endure a lot to get up there in the right conditions. It's wet a lot of the time, but yeah, I think someday it's probably going to become quite a popular route, I hope. And it has been encouraging. Like some of the best climbers around my home state in Colorado, like Daniel Woods and Steve Hong and Carlos, like all these guys that are really strong Colorado climbers have been trying it again. So I hope one of them does it.
Yeah, I think most people actually think that you did it before chopping your finger, which makes it so impressive that you did it with only 9 fingers.
Yeah, maybe I should go back there someday and see if anything's changed. I worked on it enough. I still remember all the holds like 15, 18 years later, whatever it's been.
Nice. So you have a good memory for the sequences. You would still tell most of the sequences on the down wall.
Yeah, I mean, I'm worse now than it was kind of in my peak, I suppose. But yeah, there was probably when I was like 20, 22 years old, I was like, I remember every move on every hard climb I've ever done, and I certainly can't say that anymore. But Kevin, that was one of his amazing contributions to the down walls. He remembered every like minuscule body movement of every single move from year to year, and so we would spend, several weeks each year just reacquainting himself, and basically that would be me climbing the moves and he telling me what I had done the year before.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to record it or anything?
No, it was just recorded in Kevin's memory. It was good.
Nice.
So the Olympics is going to happen next year at the same time. Is that correct? Yeah. They just postponed it by 1 year.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea like when I look at your climbing, it's like you just decide what you want and you make it happen. Like, I want to do the hardest sport climb in the world. I want to do the hardest boulder problem. Now you're like, I want to win the Olympics. Do you have any idea of what's next after the Olympics?
For sure, I want to go back outdoors for as much as it will be possible. Climbing again, maybe 9C. I've got a few projects that could be around there. One project is actually in Norway as well, in the same cave. The Silence was previously called Project Heart, and there's still the Project Big. So the line is the line of the cave. I mean, I've always been following my heart and my dreams, and I can't really tell what my dreams and what my heart will tell me in 10 years. At the moment, there is this Project Bake, for example, which is like too important in my mind to like let it go. Yeah, I know I want to do that route one day, that's for sure. I would love to go to Greenland one day, just for like the experience. Always been like the scenery, the landscape that I wanted to see.
Yeah, that's cool. I feel the same way. Maybe we should team up sometime, go to Greenland.
Yeah, all right. Absolutely. I would like to learn from you. Maybe let's team up with Alex as well and just storm some big walls there.
Yeah, love it. But although I've sort of started to conceive this idea of bringing my family, so there's a chance that my little kids might come on our trip to Greenland if we plan it. Hopefully you can deal with that.
They will love it.
But we'll get a nice boat. You know, we can put them in one part of the boat. And you can have your own room maybe for at least some of the time. Yeah.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah, so Adam, thank you so much. This has been a pretty incredible opportunity to have, an in-depth conversation like this. You've inspired me so much throughout the years, and I'm sure that's not going to stop. So good luck with the Olympics and everything else, climbing an IC, and then plan that trip to Greenland someday.
Yeah, thank you so much for chatting. I actually got to read your book again during the COVID quarantine. It was so inspiring, and it kept me going through all those days when just going on the campus board and running laps in my climbing gym. Lots of inspiration. Thank you for that, and hope to see you at the crack soon.